Hi, Joey Chris here with Professional Contractor Supply. When it comes to fall protection, it's important that the competent person or end user is capable of identifying a hazard and then understanding how to mitigate it. This can be done through procedure or through product selection. This video will concentrate on the information you will need when selecting the proper anchor for concrete. Okay, before we choose the right anchor, we have to answer some questions, and they are as follows. What is the PSI of the concrete? I often get asked, is shotcrete or lightweight concrete suitable for concrete anchors? The answer to this is typically no, as the manufacturer guidelines for each product you're planning on using will give you what the minimum PSI should be. In most instances, this is between 3,000 and 4,000. The next thing you'll need to know is what is the depth of the concrete, as manufacturers vary in what their minimum thickness requirement must be. Typically, you can expect between 5 and 8 inches, although reading the owner's manual is a must before installing any anchor. Next on the checklist is to determine what is the minimum distance away from the edge that you'll need to affix your anchor. And again, this can be found in the owner's manual. I often get asked if concrete anchors can be installed in a concrete-filled pan deck. And in most instances, the answer is yes. But each manufacturer is different in both allowing it to be done and or the location it must be placed. If installing the anchor from below, a hole first must be drilled through the metal deck and then use a properly sized concrete drill bit. The hole must be drilled in the deepest part of the flange to meet the minimum thickness requirement by the manufacturer. Now, this can be more difficult if you're trying to drill the hole from the top, as knowing where the deep part of the flange is can be problematic. The concern here is that the concrete could spall or crack and therefore lose compression on the fastener. Again, I'm going to recommend that you look at the owner's manual to review it, as they are not all the same. Okay, so here are some other factors you may need to consider before installing a concrete anchor. One would be, is the slab you're planning to drill into a post-tension deck? For most instances, this is not a good idea for obvious reasons. The exception would be if the deck was previously scanned and you can identify where the cables are located. Another determination is if the anchor is going to be temporary or permanent. Permanent anchors tend to be posts located on a roof or wall-mounted connectors that allow access to work near fall hazards. The work would include machinery, security cameras, solar modules, or communication equipment. It's important to note that when installing any concrete anchor that you do not place the anchor within the fall zone. This distance can vary, but normally 6 feet is the minimum distance you will need to be back from an unprotected edge or a fall area. If you're working under the EM 385-1-1 military requirements, that distance could be as much as 15 feet depending on the type of work you are conducting. Unfortunately, there is no mention in EM 385 of this setback distance other than the warning line requirements. I would suggest that you research the requirements for the particular area you may be working. I would also be cognizant of where you are working, as some contractors or property owners may have standards that are far greater than OSHA. Remember that you've bid the job to the contractors or building owner safety standards, and the requirements therefore must be met. Something you should also consider regarding the permanent anchor posts that I mentioned. Not all posts are created the same. California now requires special tieback anchors depending on the structure height and or the type of work the anchor is to be used for. If the post is to be mounted on a concrete deck and has some type of insulation or membrane cover, then you may want to consider purchasing an anchor such as a DBI Sala tip-over anchor. After the anchor has been installed with concrete fasteners, it must be waterproofed. The anchor is made specifically for a membrane roof. It's designed so that the membrane on the base of the anchor can be sealed to the membrane on the roof by the installer. In some applications, insulation has been applied above the concrete. In this case, specialty fasteners may be required due to the fact that the base is sitting on top of the insulation and below the membrane, but fastened to the concrete. Now, some concrete anchors require a 2-part epoxy with the use of threaded rod. This is a perfectly acceptable method, But the only consideration here is if the anchors are going to be installed in, let's say, a concrete water tank. Not all epoxies are approved, as the carcinogens in the epoxy may leak into the water. The easy fix here is to make sure that the epoxy that you're using is approved for that application. Most of the time, permanent anchors is where you will see the epoxy anchors being used. This would include permanent anchor receivers that stay in the concrete covered until they are needed to be used. Here is the anchor and how it works. Poured in place concrete residential high-rises that have balconies would be a great example of where to use this anchor. It can be installed on the bottom of each balcony deck and covered with a cap. When needed, you remove the cap, install the anchor, and perform the work. Once done, remove the anchor, reinstall the cap, and you're good to go. If the connection of the anchor is too high to reach, then you may want to consider using the ground-up anchor by Werner Fall Protection. In this case, you would install the anchor into the formwork. Once the concrete has been poured and cures, you can install the anchor with a special pole. This pole allows for the installation to be done from the ground up. Connecting your lanyard or retractable is done at the same time. Let's look at some of the other concrete anchors that may be familiar and maybe some that aren't. This anchor is made by Faltech and can be used on number 10 rebar or 1.1/8" threaded rod. Please note that a rebar wing nut or 1.1/8" hex nut for the threaded rod must be used in conjunction with these anchors. Another new anchor by Faltech is this wedge style anchor. It's their part number 7446. Now this anchor actually holds 6,000 pounds and it can be used with a horizontal lifeline. When building parking structures or working close to the lower level, specialty systems and precautions must be taken. Both Safeway's Fall Protection and DBI Sola 3M provide a solution here. To use the DBI Sola system, you must insert a 12-inch by 4-inch can into the wet concrete. Once the concrete has cured, you drop the tall aluminum poles in and then connect a horizontal lifeline above the user's head. The system is designed for 2 people and fall clearances are provided by the manufacturer. Safeways makes the best in class for this application and it's called the SafeLink system. They give you the option to install the cans into the wet concrete or connect with a clamp-on base to the rebar. They also offer bases that can be mounted on top of the concrete with specialty concrete anchors. Safeway's system has a tensioning cable above that allows for up to 4 users with varying fall clearances depending on the amount of users and the span length. Retractables or SRLs are always recommended when using these systems as they are the best at reducing overall fall distance. When working on concrete girders, both Honeywell Miller and 3M offer this horizontal lifeline that can also provide you with pass-throughs as you move through the middle stanchions. This would be considered a temporary fall protection system. Here is an instance where you're looking to anchor into a concrete parapet, yet you would prefer not to drill into the structure. This is known as a parapet anchor that most manufacturers offer. Again, each manufacturer will have minimum requirements as far as the thickness and the height of the parapet. You simply drop the anchor over the parapet, clamp it tight, and you're good to go. Normally, the anchor point will hang from the D-ring on the outside of the parapet. If you reverse it and do the same on the other side of the parapet, you can actually run a horizontal lifeline. You will have a maximum of a 100-foot horizontal lifeline, and you will need to take into consideration the fall clearance to avoid hitting the lower level. Lastly, you cannot run the horizontal lifeline parallel to the parapet, only perpendicular. One of the most commonly used concrete anchors is this anchor, originally made by Climetech. They manufactured the anchor and made it for most of the major fall protection companies. Now, Climetech was later purchased by Werner Fall Protection. This has resulted in many new innovations of concrete anchors, which we will show you at the end of this video. What made the RB anchor so popular is that it required you only to drill a 3/4 inch hole, 3 inches into the concrete, push the anchor in and release the pin. Once the work was completed, you pulled the plunger back out and out came the anchor. Unfortunately, many users did not trust the anchor and would load the anchor before use. This would in turn make it difficult to retrieve the anchor out of the concrete once the work was done. These following anchors use sleeve concrete fasteners with an attached swiveling D-ring. To ensure that the anchor is attached properly, the outer red covering will shear off once the tension level was achieved. When done using the anchor, loosen the bolt and the entire anchor pulls out of the hole, leaving nothing in the concrete to rust. Reusing the anchor is permitted, although new shear bolts will be required for each use. Here we have a really popular anchor called the Mega Swivel Anchor. It requires a single concrete sleeve bolt and, like the prior anchor, can be removed once the work has been completed. This anchor is also offered in stainless steel and can be used with a weldable puck for permanent application in metal. Oftentimes in new construction, concrete pillars or columns are available, although penetrating the columns may not be permitted. In this case, you can use the Safeway's ratcheting column strap. Depending on the diameter of the column, you can ratchet the strap tight at an elevated height and use it as your anchor point or as an anchor for a horizontal lifeline. This is a great solution to keep the anchor strap from sliding down the column when the tension is released. Many times I will see lifting slings being used as an anchor point for fall protection or with a horizontal lifeline, and I will tell you that almost all manufacturers of slings forbid the use of their products for fall protection purposes. This is why we sell beam or column straps that are made to length by the fall protection manufacturers. These Safeway's anchor straps are available in both 15 and 30-foot lengths. The straps have a floating D-ring that can be positioned anywhere on the column. There will be times when you're working on a concrete deck that you can't penetrate. In this case, many manufacturers make a weighted anchor. These anchors come in all shapes and sizes, and some are capable of allowing multiple users at the same time, and some are made to elevate your anchor point to reduce fall clearance. These anchors have special requirements of where they can be placed, so once again, check with their prospective manufacturer's owner's manual. Growing in popularity are these mobile weighted anchors made by both Garlock and Tie-Down. Tie-Down even offers an anchor system that allows you to space them 80 feet apart and connect a 3-person horizontal lifeline. Each cart can be moved by a single worker for easy transport. It's important to remember when using SRLs with these carts that they be rated for the leading edge or be Class 2 under the new 2023 ANSI standards. Here is a pretty slick anchor made by DBI Sala. It's called the Mobi-Lock Self-Contained Vacuum Anchor. It comes complete with a compressed air tank. This product was designed to be used mainly on aircraft, but will also work on structures that can support at least 5,000 pounds. It comes with a warning system in case the suction begins to wane. Obviously, this anchor has many restrictions, including connection area, so special precautions must be taken. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, these are some of the newer removable concrete anchors to hit the market. This one is known as the R3 by Werner Fall Protection. They have improved the design to remove the cables that could sometimes bend. The complete unit is made out of stainless steel and has a swiveling D-ring at the top. It's also approved to be used in conjunction with a horizontal lifeline. The Werner Fall Protection Anchor is set to be released in the second quarter of 2023. Now another option is the port-in-place strap. These are typically straps that have a loop on one side and a D-ring on the other. They come anywhere between 3 and 10 feet long. Here's how they work. You take the strap, you wrap it around the rebar, and you leave it up inside the formwork. When they strip the form, the strap comes out and you've got yourself an anchor point. Now you got to be very careful when you have these straps. There's some issues we have to worry about. First, if the wind is blowing, these straps will go back and forth, back and forth. If you don't inspect them, what you'll see is that that material on the back side, which is the nylon, will wear all the way through to the D-ring, and the D-ring could potentially drop off. Worse than that is you don't see the problem and a worker uses it, they actually have a fall and that D-ring comes apart. That would be horrible. Another issue is that the straps, when they're hanging onto the concrete, they can sometimes wear due to the sharp concrete. Also, ceiling grinders coming by, they grind the ceiling and they might nick the strap. Super important that we inspect that strap every single time before we use it. And then on a smaller concern is this, these straps hanging multiple floors, the wind blows, it's like chimes. So you might want to look at getting padded D-rings so that they're not so loud. Now, we have a solution to all of this. Werner makes a loop insert. What happens is you cast this insert into the deck, like we talked about earlier, and then you come back later and you will install a mega swivel anchor. We're going to talk more about that anchor as we get farther down in the video. There are solutions to both of these problems, so feel free to reach out if you would like more details. Now, this anchor is made by Guardian Fall Protection, and they too have improved their design. And lastly, this is a picture of the new Safeways anchor to be released in the Q3 of 2023. Here is a brand new fall protection system by Tie Down. It's called the Web Rail. It attaches to existing concrete columns and even provides for 4 fall arrest anchor points within the system. And here's what it looks like. Okay, one side note you should always consider when purchasing an anchor is to read the owner's manual and see what the requirement is on who can install the anchor. A little known fact about many anchors is that the manufacturer will require a qualified person to do the install. Now, normally most anchors require a competent person to oversee the installation. What's the difference, you ask? A qualified person is essentially an engineer. I will give you an example. If you were to install a concrete anchor into a 2-foot by 2-foot concrete block, you would technically be meeting the distance guidelines, although the overall weight of the anchor would fail if loaded. Another example would be if you were to attach an anchor to a metal standing seam roof, but neglected to screw the roof down properly, it too would fail. All anchors are pre-engineered only if they meet the installation guidelines. In some instances, field engineering must be conducted. There are many other anchors that we have not covered in this video, so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us with the contact information we've provided at the end of the video. Please remember, as a safety professional, your goal is to always reduce risk. Choosing the right anchor is a great first step. Have a safe day.